distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to extend to you a very warm welcome on behalf of the PG and Research Department of English, Arulmigu Palaniyadar Arts College for Women, Palani. This is once again Mrs. Nagapushpam, Assistant Professor of English, happily welcoming you all to the national level 2-day celebration of World Suicide Prevention Day 2020. Our department is very much happy to conduct this awareness program, and I as the coordinator is much privileged to host this wonderful awareness program. The main objective of this program is to create awareness among the youth about the prevention of suicide, to motivate students to create awareness among family, friends and the peer group members on prevention of suicide. World Suicide Prevention Day is celebrated on 10th September of every year. This day is observed to create awareness and to promote the worldwide action to prevent suicide. On every World Suicide Prevention Day, events and activities occur to establish that suicide is not the only solution to any problem in our lives. Why is it observed? It's a developing problem and the numbers will tell you a shocking story. According to the World Health Organization, people every year worldwide, although some estimates put that the number close to 1 million. Suicide seems to be the leading cause of death for people aged between 15 and 29. Each one of us needs to talk to people and convey that suicide is not only the ultimate solution to any problem and there is a life to live for. And what is the theme of this World Suicide Prevention Day? A different theme is established every year for World Suicide Prevention Day, and every theme aims in highlighting a particular aspect of the suicide and how it can be forbidden. And the theme of this year is Work Together to Prevent Suicide. World Suicide Prevention Day can be observed while staying safe at home amid COVID-19 situations across the world. This pandemic has changed the world and all of our daily lives. World Suicide Prevention Day aims to create awareness about the importance of life and suicide not being the solution to any problem. So, by staying safe at home, you can talk to people about suicide prevention to the people you know, or you can create awareness among the social media using the hashtag World Suicide Prevention Day. Here is the resource person who is going to show the positivity of life. I am much privileged to welcome the resource person of today's program, Dr. D.R. Pratima Rai, Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, St. John's Junior Degree and PG College for Women, Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. Before introducing her, I would like to give a short intro about Madam Dr. D.R. Pratima Rai. She has 24 years of experience in the field of education. She is the member of the Indian Society of Commonwealth Studies ISCS. She is the member of the Association for English Studies of India AESI. She is the registered member of National Translation Mission NTM of CIIL Mysore, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, New Delhi. She is working as head of the Department of English in St. John's Junior Degree and PG College for Women, Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. She is working as an academic counselor at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Kurnool. It's a great pleasure to welcome such a noted personality as a guest of our honor today. So, on behalf of the PG and Research Department of English, Arulmigu Palaniyadar Arts College for Women, once again I welcome the resource person to this wonderful program. And I would extend my sincere gratitude to our Madam Principal and my head of the department for having given me permission to do this program. And I would like to utilize this platform to thank everyone who stood beside me. Hereby, I extend my prayers to Lord Muruga to shower his blessings on us and make this program a successful one. Friends, place your hand over your heart. Can you feel it? That is called purpose. You are alive for a reason. So don't ever give up. See you all in another interesting program. Until then, it's bye bye from Mrs. Nagapushpam. Thank you.
Honorable Convener of the National Awareness Program on World Suicide Prevention Day celebrations and the revered Principal of Arulmigu Palaniyandar Arts College for Women Palani, Madam Dr. N. Puvaneshwari, the Organizing Secretary and the esteemed Head of the PG and Research Department of English, my fellow associate, Professor P. Selvi, and the dynamic and sprightly sweet coordinator, Assistant Professor N. Nagapushpam, learned faculty online, and the sparkling students and audience. Greetings of the lively and lovely day, filled with the positive vibes of the day. Let me at the outset wish you all a happy World Suicide Prevention Day. Initially, I pledge my profuse thanks to the principal of the college for giving me this splendid opportunity to talk on this special and meaningful occasion. Allow me to acknowledge my gratefulness to the head of the Department of English and the PG and Research Wing of the college for extending the invitation to address the two-day World Suicide Prevention Day celebrations, and my appreciation of thanks to the coordinator, Mrs. Nagapushpam, who has been enthusiastically in correspondence with me pertaining to this program. The college has christened these celebrations as positivity to life, a quality to be imbibed these days indeed. Then, coming to the presentation proper, I wish at the outset to focus on these subtopics. Primarily, it is an intro leading to the significance of the day. We can watch this in slide 6. And then, discussion of life and on life. The third part of my talk is, are we living or existing? And you can see them in slides 7, 8, 9 and 10. And then goes, how is our approach to life, followed by realizing our duty as global citizens. And finally, I want to conclude with, that makes the difference. Are life worth living or committing suicide? Of course, it's not just theoretical, but anecdotally stuffed talk will be next. So, first coming to an intro leading to the significance of the day. Intro is the introduction in short, as you all know it very well. Yes, let us see slide 6. September 10th is World Suicide Prevention Day. In short, it's called as WSPD, and its activities are carried on for a month. Going to the origins of World Suicide Prevention Day, the International Association for Suicide Prevention, IASP, in collaboration with the World Health Organization and the World Federation for Mental Health, have decided to observe the World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th every year and continue their awareness programs to culminate on October 10th, the World Mental Health Day. The first WSPD event was in the year 2003. Running a 1-month-long awareness program to prevent the suicide cases all over the world itself is an indication of the gravity of situation. Let us see slide 3. Every year, the international community has a relevant theme, and we in India too have an appropriate and related theme to focus upon this issue depending on the native problems of suicide. This year, in 2020, the theme internationally is working together to prevent suicide, and at national level, it is connection. Now, let us see slide 4. How can we work together to prevent suicide? Very easy answer, isn't it? I mean, in theory it is easy, but it's irrefutably hard to practice. We can prevent suicide cases by getting connected with one another driving out loneliness and depression in a person. Preventing suicide is to resist the victim from taking the extreme step of ending life forcibly, injecting self-confidence in the person in a way that matches his psychology. This is very important. Here, I wish to give you a common illustration of dressing of ladies in our colleges. When a woman wears a traditional saree, she wants to have a matching blouse, right? On the other hand, if the salesman hands you a black blouse for a dark green saree and says, "This is very good combination, ma'am," she immediately leaves the shop, never to step into it, and that he is imbecile. Believe me, I vouch, we don't even say foolish or ignorant salesman, but imbecile. Similar is the case with a victim attempting suicide. Without understanding his mind process at suicide, if we, like that salesman, without a clarity of what goes with the mentality, suggest the same treatment for everyone, it doesn't work. Worst is, we may even be pushing him into the verge of negative extreme. Further, that is irritation, an instant ending of life, life cessation. Yes. So next comes the question, what is life? And here we can see, recently when we see the history and retrospect it, there were many cases of self-imposed death around various corners. Each suicide has its reason and version behind. But the fact is that the causative factor for all such deaths is lack of value for life. It is the pathetic ignorance of the preciousness of life due to societal apathy. In such a bleak situations, the theme that India has given is fantastically appropriate. When I started to think of this, I am struck with a question asked in every age and eon, but still the satisfactory, wholesome response remains to be answered. The big question is, what is life? You're alive, and so am I. The dog that you and I can hear barking in the street is alive, and so is the tree in the garden or by the roadside. However, snow falling from the clouds is not alive. The laptop or the smartphone or the tab you're using to watch and listen to this problem is not alive, and neither is a chair nor table. The parts of a chair that are made of wood were once alive, but they aren't any longer. If you were to burn the wood in the fire would not be alive either. So, what is life? $1,000 question. Right from ancient Greek philosophers to modern lifestyle gurus, all have answered to this question in an endless variety of ways. And yet, we still search for a satisfying answer. Right? Definition of life differs from person to person. Biologist talks of life as specific distinction of an organism by its capacity to grow, metabolize, respond to external stimuli, adopt and reproduce, etc. A mathematician talks of life in terms of additions, subtractions, multiplications and divisions. To a politician, life is all about crossing the age of minority and becoming a major, where the person uses his adult franchise or adult suffrage for the politician's gain. Philosophical person speaks of life as illusion. Students say life is monotonous. To a pessimist, life has no intrinsic meaning or value. An optimist talks of life as positive, favorable and desirable, and life expects the best possible outcome from any given situation. A common man takes life as it comes to him. A nihilist philosophy views of life as nothingness. In fact, this concomitant with the demise of positivism in the post-war era has paid to inquiry into values of life and to delve on existentialism and absurdism. Spiritually oriented says that life is God-centered. Sociologists speak of life not in isolation but society. Social life may refer to an individual's interpersonal relationships with people within the immediate surroundings of general public. So, the answer to this question depends on what the outlook of that particular person is. So, different professionals, depending on their professional background, has defined what life is. But whatever they say, ultimately it is an individual's outlook that defines his or her own life. It is exactly at this point that a person extends his thinking to what does it mean to be alive? Is life worth living, or are we merely existing? That is, are we merely existing without any purpose? This is the mood-setting question to a life-deciding person. How is the attitude of that particular person at that particular point of time? If it is positive, the outcome is life living and living with zest and gusto. On the negative scale, it is life losing, admitting cowardice, and ultimately ending up in suicide. All this boils out to concentrate on three perspectives, namely the psychological, the social, and the spiritual perspective. After watching out the factors one by one, comes the question of how to prevent the suicides recurring and how to finally get rid of this malady. Let's go into the psychological issues. When we observe the psychological aspects, suicide rates have grown exponentially since 1999, and the rate of suicidal death is higher than that of homicide. The Center for Disease Control reports that more than half of the people who die by suicide did not have a known mental health condition, but in an instantaneous emotion, at that fraction of time, at that split second, the act is done. This indicates the psychological and mental states of a person at that particular point of time. However, this doesn't rule out mental illness becoming a factor for suicides. The factors contributing to suicide include: first one, loss of housing. Secondly, a crisis in the past or a crisis in the upcoming 2 weeks. And thirdly, problematic substance abuse like narcotics or opioid drugs or alcohol. Then, physical health problems. And now, coming to the loss of housing. Definitely, the person who maintains the house has a social thrust on thinking, leading to psychosocial issue. Definitely, in this COVID season, we are seeing in the newspapers, especially those living in rented houses, were unable to, and doing a private job in the private sector, unable to pay the house rents due to non-receipt of salaries, and the landlord forcing them to vacate the houses, have a thrust on their mind as how to maintain the family on one side and the housing problem on the other side. This definitely leads to psychosocial issue, ending up the person to commit suicide in a helpless state. And coming to the crisis in the past, while the first psychological problem mainly pertains to adult, the second problem, that is a crisis in the past or a crisis in the upcoming 2 weeks, pertaining to the student community. Student suicide in India is one of this kind. The students in this present day cutthroat competition always have a pressure on their mind, a stress on their mind as to the oncoming weekly tests, weekly assignments, and parents are also so particular, the teaching staff is so particular that they stand with a very high percentage, and the parents definitely want their child to top the class. And in such event, unable to cope up with that mental stress, the students, when at the past exam that has taken place, unable to decide the score that they're going to get, or in the upcoming crisis of the exam, unable to meet up with the syllabi of the exam, end up their lives committing suicides. Every day we are watching this, and according to a national NCRB, that is National Crime Records Bureau data, 6.7% of all suicides in the country are committed by students every year. That is, one student every year, every day, every hour on an average. Despite being one of the most advanced states in India, Maharashtra has the highest number of student suicides, accounting to 14%, and this is followed by Tamil Nadu, which is the second highest rate with 10%. Out of the total 8,934 student suicides on an average, Tamil Nadu alone has 955 cases of suicides. The second thing is the problematic substance abuse like narcotics and opioid drugs along with alcohol addiction. And this is also found in the young category most and then in the adult category too. And then comes the physical health problems, and this is linked to the mental health, and physical illness may cause psychiatric symptoms. At the very least, physical illness is likely to exacerbate psychiatric symptoms such as anxiety and depression in patients with mental health problems. Added to this, the psych guides published by the American Addiction Centers at San Diego, USA provide about 27 mental illnesses, some of which are so fatal that they lead to suicidal ending of life. And some of them, the clippings I have posted at the end of the PowerPoint, and just to mention some of them, and like anger, anxiety, behavioral disorder, bipolar disorder, cognitive crisis, depression, even eating also becomes such type of disorder. And then getting addicted to internet or computer, it acts so much upon the mental health. And then the neurological disorder, the OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, personality disorder, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is generally called as PTSD, and it is taking the highest toll in the suicidal rates. And then the sex disorders, psychosis, video games, all these have a very strong negative influence upon the lives of an individual. And here I would just like to pass on to the next by passing on a caution to the young. If any one or more of these qualities are observed in a person with greater incidence, it's definitely time to give attention and attend upon it in a positive manner. And next come the socio-cultural factors that claim lives. Among the socio-cultural factors, the relationship problems stands at the highest. With increasing urbanization, migration to corporate sector for employment's sake, the breaking down of traditional family system, there is an increase in social isolation in India. Relationship problems and feelings of loneliness render particularly the migrant population vulnerable to high suicide risk. Individuals who report having more friends and less subjective loneliness are less likely to have suicidal ideation or engage in suicidal behaviors in spite of living alone. People at greater risk should be encouraged to receive support from family members, friends, community, mental health professionals, self-help organizations, or religious groups. The same social changes and loneliness can cause depression and significant anxiety, and this results in insomnia and hopelessness, which are closely linked to suicides. Early recognition of mental health issues and their management is of paramount importance at that particular stage. And then it is the farmer's suicide. It has been observed that the farmers who committed suicide were under huge debts, and the income from agriculture was not adequate to repay the borrowed money. In the absence of any help, these farmers perhaps chose to end their lives. This phenomenon is imposing a challenge not only to mental health professionals but also to politicians and social reformers. What are the strategies to be adopted here? A multi-pronged approach, including financial, material, psychological support, is needed to reduce the incidence of suicide among the farmers, because they are the backbone of our country, and this issue has to be addressed with due importance. India's economy vastly depends on agriculture, with around 60% of its people directly or indirectly depend upon it. Different reasons like droughts, low yield prices, exploitation by middlemen, and inability to pay loans lead Indian farmers to die by suicide. And then it is the family suicide. Taking cognizance of an increase in press reports of family members committing suicide together, the government has begun enumerating such suicide pacts from the year 2009. Such family suicide is reported to be the end result of extreme poverty and debts. Cultural factors like excommunicating a family due to a child marrying a socially inferior person, or due to the child marrying a person who belongs to a community different from theirs or a caste different from theirs, still persist. This is a cultural problem. Similarly, the fear of such exclusions and expulsions, although other factors such as intractable ailments of important family members, humiliating incidents to the family, and superstitious beliefs might also be contributory. On average, we find that even this case of suicide is seen gender-wise, and among the gender, the male suicide rate is twice to that of females. And another cause of suicide is seen as domestic violence. That is, domestic violence is seen to be another cause of suicide, and it is a major risk factor for suicide in a case study performed in Bangalore. However, as a fraction of total suicides, violence against women such as domestic violence, rape, incest and dowry accounted for less than 4% of total suicides. Definitely, among the domestic violence, especially in this COVID season, we find that the spouse getting frustrated because of a continuous lockdown, prolonged lockdown, there is much of domestic violence in that area. And job or financial problems, that is, this comes under a financial issue. So here we find, as per the NCRB, on 3rd June 2020, the NCRB data says suicide because of joblessness grew by 14%, reporting an increase of 4.8%. Of these 20%, those between 18 to 45 year age group amounted to 20%, and the age group between 40 and 60 amounted to 10% of suicides. The cases are common among both the white and blue collared workers, while things like children's education, home and vehicle loans hurt the white collar workers. Losing jobs, the complete inability to maintain the family affects the poor. I don't want to further go into the statistical details, as anyone can browse for them, and it is at the click of their mouse. But by the above information, it is understood suicide is among all age groups, right from 18 years to 60 years of age. And in this connection, Professor Charan Singh, former senior economist at International Monetary Fund and presently the chief executive of eGrow Foundation, said that the country must start MSME universities. MSME stand for micro, small, medium enterprise. It can do two things. The first thing is it creates employment, and secondly, it can remove people from poverty. The prevalent coronavirus disease aided further to suicidal deaths. More recently, attention has been addressed to broader social risk factors such as bullying in adolescents, suicide contagion, sexual orientation, and the popular media, all being the result of lockdown. Men are frustrated to remain in houses all through the day, and women in the houses are frustrated continuously to literal being confined as homemakers. The children's present with prolonged holidays aggravated the annoyance. This turned the house into a battlefield, a case of anger transference in a situation where none can be held responsible, but only the weak person can be exploited. The psychological and social angles would give answer to most part of questions: are we living or are we existing? To complete the answer, there is a need to examine the problems from the spiritual perspective too, along with the psychological and socio-cultural. We Indians are basically God-fearing, with an innate natural and also exterior piety. Refer to the scriptures, and only those who got disconnected with God have committed suicide. Not a single instant is seen where a person fueled up his spirits in sincere prayer has ever committed suicide. Because a sincere prayer comes out of the heart in difficult and critical situations, eh? But it's not impossible. The results are definitely amazing. In the Bible, in New Testament, according to the book of Romans 8, as per the book of Romans 8th chapter, I quote, "What can separate us from the love of God? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? A. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him that loved us." And it is, we are unquote, and it is God who loves us with the love called agape, the unconditional love. Yes, with a triumphant combination of clear sight, healthy human connections, and above all, a strong faith in the Almighty God, can we never entertain negative thinking. That is positivity in life, the very theme of the present awareness program. And this positivity in life brings victory to life, adds nobility to human life, which is a precious gift of God. Coming to Indian context, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are the two twin epics of India, and down the centuries they have influenced the thoughts, temper, conduct and culture of Indians. In the Mahabharata, on hearing the news about the death of his son Abhimanyu in the battle, Arjuna wanted a huge fire to be prepared for him to commit suicide, forgetting his own earlier advice to another old man who tried to commit suicide by falling into the fire on the death of his son. But he was advised by his uncle Krishna, Lord Krishna, to be away from that very thought, and this gives Arjuna strength to come back to normalcy. Similarly, coming to the history, the great Chola king Koparan Chola renounced the kingdom in favor of his son and decided to undertake the traditional fast into death in one of the small islands surrounded by river Kaveri in the vicinity of the sacred Vaishnava shrine in Sri Rangam. All the elements mentioned by the French sociologist David Emile Durkheim, and he is also called as the modern architect of social science. Probably all these played a part in this suicide, namely egoistic, altruistic and anomic. So with such ego, pride and altruism, the thought of entertaining suicide is completely erased with a complete dependence in faith unto God. So, at this case, there ponders another question. What and how our approach to life? What should be our approach to life? And how should be our approach to life? To answer these two questions, we need to know what the value of life is. Is life worth living? Or are we doubting the life? Or are we ignorant of the value of one's own life? A big doubt is, once again, I reiterate, am I living or am I just existing? To tell about it, I want to take Hamlet's soliloquy versus King David's victories. Of course, Hamlet is only a legendary figure of Shakespeare borrowed from the legend of Hamlet, but the psychosocial disorders that Shakespeare gives to Hamlet are real disorders. And that is the reason why I have chosen Hamlet to be compared with a historical personage, King David.